Welcome back, everybody. It is Thursday, March 16th. John Aravosis here with the Aravosis Report. How's everybody doing? So I'm closing up some of my apps so I can save my bandwidth here. As always, I will get started on TikTok on my iPad, and we'll give them a couple, 2-3 minutes to arrive. And then the actual show starts in about 3 minutes because we like to give you guys enough time to join us. So if you are watching this later on a recording on YouTube, for example, feel free to jump ahead maybe 3 minutes and then you'll find us. Anyway, how's everybody doing? I am basking in sunlight again, still trying my new trick with the the sheet hanging from my window so I get more light, but we'll see. We shall see. Anyway, how's everybody doing? I was busy trying to find more auction items. My life is busy. Vlad is helping us find very cool stuff for the Discord auction. I mean, ridiculously cool stuff. So that is exciting. Anyway, how's everybody? I'm warning you in advance, we've got a ton of news today. I am not going to Discord afterwards. This show is going to go long tonight. Tonight is going to be, it's going to be a long one. So just warning you in advance. I'm guessing this is a 7:30, an hour and a half show, I think, is what I would expect. There's a ton of news, and I tried to cut it back, but honestly, it's too much news. Hey, Rich, if we get that, I'm keeping it. Привіт. Привіt. Is that somebody from Ukraine, maybe, perhaps? Hello from Norway, Otanbat. Exactly. Introduce yourself. Say where you're from. Finland. Nice. We love Finland. Interesting. Okay, hold on. Vlad is messaging me as I talk to you. I'm going to send Vlad a quick message. Hold on. Meaning. Oops. I'm trying to type to Vlad. We're going to start in a minute, folks, but remember, we take a couple minutes to get critical mass here. Writing to my friend in Ukraine, my colleague who's helping us get auction items, meaning... Okay. All right. Let's get rolling. Thank you, Carlos Bond. Let's get rolling, guys. So I am John Aravosis. Welcome. This is the Aravosis Report. This is a daily show I do Monday to Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, U.S., and we cover the news from Ukraine. Basically, I've been in politics for over 30 years here in Washington, D.C., 2 years in New York working at the United Nations. Biggest mistake of my life, working at the UN. Horrible place. But otherwise, I've had about 30 plus years of experience in domestic and foreign policy here in America. Studied foreign policy at Georgetown. I have a law degree there. Have done a lot of international work. You name it. Any case, so the idea here behind the show is I basically walk you guys through the stories of the day that I think are important. I tell you why I think they're important. And then I try to give you some value added as a political expert and also a media guy. I've written for The Economist, among others. I'm also a journalist, to try to give you a sense of the news behind the news, like what's actually going on. So that's what we do. First half of the show is the news. Second half, I take your guys' questions. On TikTok, you can submit questions via the Q&A link that's in my profile. On YouTube and the rest of you, just to remind folks, I've got TikTok over here on my iPad, and then over here on my laptop, I've got YouTube and Twitch and Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter and everybody else. Thank you, Ben. That was very nice of you. I appreciate that. You guys can submit questions and comments via the Q&A link in my profile on TikTok. The rest of you can use the comment box at the bottom of the screen. I very much appreciate your gifts. Thank you for the March Shamrock there, who is that 978. I do this full time. I've been doing it for free since the war broke out. And basically, because I am not rich, I pay my bills with your guys' gifts and support. So please keep supporting me. I very much appreciate it. And you guys have been amazing for this. So thank you. So please keep the gifts coming on TikTok. Please keep the super chats coming, etc. on YouTube. And I will always do a shout out when I see them. And also questions with super chats on YouTube, I always give priority to. All right. It is day 383 of Putin's 10-day special military operation. Lot of news. Jesus, there's a lot of news today. Oh, actually, let me mention really quick, too. This weekend, Saturday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern Time, U.S., I will be doing my typical coffee talk, sort of a coffee talk hangout I do on TikTok, but also on Discord with our paid subscribers. So the paid subscribers on TikTok and the paid subscribers on Discord. It'll be 10 a.m. Eastern Time, U.S. We can sort of talk more at the end of the show for more information, but just come to TikTok at 10 a.m. Eastern if you're a paid subscriber. And on Discord, same thing. All right, let's get rolling here. So today is the 1-year anniversary of the single deadliest attack in the war in Ukraine over the last year. That was Russia's attack on a drama theater in Mariupol, Ukraine. Remember, Mariupol is thank you for the flowers there. Who is that? Phoenix. Mariupol is all the way over here, sort of southeastern Ukraine. Okay. The Russians occupy all of this. And the Russians, remember, the Russians were having a very hard time getting Mariupol. They got a lot of the city, just destroyed it, absolutely destroyed it. But they were having a hard time because the Ukrainian troops, the the Azov battalion, was holding out in the Azov steel plant. Remember, for like 2 months, 2,000 Ukrainian troops held off 14,000 Russians. I mean, it was an amazing story. Well, Mariupol is also famous because of the Russian war crimes. Mariupol is the city that the Russians bombed that maternity wing of a hospital. Remember the images of the woman being carried out and she's laying down on a stretcher, pregnant, like ready to give birth. She and her child subsequently died a few days later. And I would say probably most famously, Mariupol is famous for the war crime Russia committed 1 year ago today, the most deadly attack in this war, when Russia killed, according to the Associated Press, around 600 Ukrainians who were refugees hiding out in a drama theater. And the theater, basically a theater for drama, right? Not a theater as in a cinema. And thank you, user, for the hearts there. And they had written on the side of the theater the word "дети" in Russian, which means children. And it was to let the Russian pilots know there are children in this place. The Russian pilots knew, and they attacked anyway, leveled the theater. That was a year ago today. Other news, by the way, there's a lot of news today. The show is absolutely positively going to go late. I'm just warning you in advance. We're going to be here for probably an hour and a half. I'm going to do probably 45 minutes of news and then 45 half hour plus of questions, because there's a ton of news and I tried to cut it back. There ain't no cutting back. It's just a lot of news. So 4 Polish MIGs fighter jets are coming to Ukraine in the next few days. Thank you, Annie, for the rose. I will eat my hat. I have been doubting this story for a week now. We've been hearing for a week that Poland was talking about we expect to provide fighter jets to Ukraine. And what do you know? It looks like it's happening. Thank you, 978, for the match wand. The report today is that Poland will be sending an initial allotment of 4 MiG fighter jets. These are Soviet-era fighter jets that the Eastern Bloc used to use, and Ukraine as well used to use. Now, just to kind of put it in context, right? Remember after World War II that the Russians came in and kidnapped, in essence, half of Europe. The half of Europe, the Russians came in to beat the Nazis. I mean, we all worked together, but the Russians came from the East, and the Russians basically never left. They stole half of Europe. They cut Germany in half and occupied it. They occupied Bulgaria, Poland, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, you name it. They took over Europe, Romania, and the Balkan states. I don't want to miss anybody, but bottom line is Russia held half of Europe hostage, and that was the Eastern Bloc. It was the Soviet bloc of countries, and it was communist dictatorships, horrific dictatorships, and they all worked together as a bloc like NATO, except it would be the, what's the version from the Marvel universe or DC Comics of the evil, is it Hydra? I think it would be the Hydra to our NATO, okay? So, but what happened was, because they were part of the Soviet bloc, they had a lot of Soviet weapons, including MiG fighter jets. So Poland was part of this Soviet bloc, so they had Soviet MiGs. Ukraine, at this point, was part of the Soviet Union itself. Russia also basically, I would say, kidnapped, I don't know a better word for it. They occupied but took over a number of the countries surrounding them and forced them to be part of, the Soviet Union, which was pretty much Russia and 14 other countries that Russia basically was holding hostage. Thank you, Aggie, for the gift there. So Ukraine was one of them. So because Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union, when Ukraine finally was given its freedom in 1991, thank you for the rose there, El, Ukraine inherited a lot of MiG fighter jets. So bottom line here is that Poland is giving Ukraine 4 MiG fighter jets in the next few days. They are jets that the Ukrainians already know how to fly, which is amazing. And the Poles say that they will be sending additional jets soon, but the jets need to be, what's the word I'm looking for? Refurbished. Thank you, Annie. I didn't write, what's the word I'm looking for here? Well, whatever it is. Servicing. They're calling it servicing, but basically the jets are old. They need to be repaired, etc. I'm really intrigued as to what the hell happened here, because we know Biden does not want Ukraine to get, bravo. Seriously, bravo Poland. Gail is saying bravo Poland on TikTok. Seriously, for the Poles, this is amazing what the Poles pulled off. We know Biden does not want fighter jets going to Ukraine. Thank you, Kelly, for the March gift. I very much doubt the Germans or the French want fighter jets going to Ukraine. We know that the Brits wanted to, but then the Brits also kind of stepped back. As soon as the Brits started talking about fighter jets, the next couple of days it was like, whoa, well, we're not saying necessarily we're going to give any. So the Brits kind of got cold feet. I think Poland forced the issue. I think Poland, I mean, it's hard to know, but again, I'm using my political background, 30 years in Washington, working in politics. I think the Polish government forced NATO's hand. NATO had to agree to this. What I mean is, there is no way Poland, how do I want to phrase this? I think Poland bluffed NATO. I don't think there's any way Poland would just do this without permission from the rest of NATO. They could, because they're their planes, but you know, it's hard to explain, but you've got a whole block of countries together you're trying to hold together. It's a lot of countries, right? It's 30 plus countries working together, or 40, I think, or more, in this war, especially the NATO group. You don't want to tick anybody off. So you want permission before you give a weapon system that everybody else might disagree with, because the other guys, France, for example, or Germany, are saying, look, we've all got our butts on the line. If Russia attacks you, they're going to attack us. We don't want you giving weapons that we think are going to provoke Russia to declare war on NATO, for example, right? So I think Poland had to go to NATO, but I think, just my guess, I wonder if Poland didn't give them an ultimatum and say, look, you need to approve these things. Thank you, Evolving, for that. You need to approve these jets that we're sending, or we are going to send them anyway because we've had it. We're on the border. Ukraine could lose this war because you all dragged your feet. We said, mind you, Poland a year ago said it wanted to send fighter jets to Ukraine, MiG fighter jets. And remember, at that point, it was the Germans and the Americans. Let's not just blame the Germans here. Thank you, Tattooed Mom, for the leprechaun. It was the Americans. Biden didn't want to do it, and Germany didn't want to do it, and the Poles wanted to do it. So the point is, the Poles don't need permission, but the Poles need permission, because we're working as a coalition of countries. And I think NATO finally said, fine, if you want to give them the weapons, give them the fighter jets. This is a big deal. Thank you, Carmel, for that. This is a really big deal. I'm very surprised. Let's see if other countries step up. I believe it was Slovakia. I think it was Slovakia that also had some planes they wanted to give, but because of elections coming up, there's all sorts of politics around it. We don't know. We don't know if anybody else is giving, but still, it's good news. By the way, one more little thing. Denmark's prime minister said today that Western nations are currently debating whether to send fighter jets to Ukraine. So to me, that means we don't know what the hell's going on with NATO right now. What are they? Oops, I'm trying to block the sun behind my head in TikTok. What do they mean they're currently debating whether to send them, right? Poland's already sending them. So what are they doing? I think NATO's in a little bit of confusion right now. Thank you, 978, for that. The drone footage. Let's talk about the drone footage. So a couple days ago, Russia basically knocks an American drone out of the sky, which has to be scuttled in the waters in the Black Sea. Thank you for the gifts. There was Evolving and Tattooed Mom. The Black Sea is area of water more or less down here, south of Ukraine, off of Turkey, off of Russia, Romania, Bulgaria. Okay, so you've got sort of everybody, and then you go further down and you've got Greece as well, right? So this is the Black Sea. The Americans were flying a drone, a reconnaissance drone, no weapons, a drone used for intelligence gathering purposes, basically to keep an eye on what the Russians are doing, check out their current force structure, what weapons they have where, what troops they have where, that kind of stuff, right? Supply lines. Thank you, Aid Poland, for the boxing robe. So the American drone was more or less around, the latest I'm seeing is maybe around here. Now, Russia is all the way over here. Russia claims Crimea is Russia, but it's not. The Russians stole it. It's Ukraine. So the Americans are here. They're in international airspace. Totally. I mean, there's not even a question of what the Americans did about it being okay. Thank you, Vic Cruz. We're allowed to fly in international airspace. The Russians are allowed to. Everyone's allowed to fly in international airspace. The Russians didn't like the fact that our drone was basically keeping a very good eye on what was going on in Crimea. And that, in essence, I was watching this on the news today, the drone is able to do very good photography And the Russians were probably worried that and they're correct, that we were going to give the photographs to the Ukrainians so the Ukrainians could better target their HIMARS, the missiles with the HIMARS on Crimea. And the Russians figured, let's knock it out of the sky. Well, the Russians denied it. The Russians said, oh, we didn't knock it out of the sky. What are you talking about, right? There was a collision. The Russians claimed, no, there was no collision. Well, U.S. government today decides to release the video showing that there was a collision. The video is very interesting because what you see is, you guys can Google it. You'll see it all over the internet. But basically, you see from the drone, there's the camera's probably in the front, so you're looking at the back of the drone. You can see the back like tail and the propellers kind of spinning, and you see the Russian fighter jet coming at it the first time, and it's dumping fuel. The Russians literally dumped fuel on top of our drone to either try to kill it or at least to obscure the cameras or basically break the spy collecting aspect of it. Veers off, comes back again, and you see it dropping the fuel again, getting really, really close to the drone. Mind you, these fighter jets go at almost the speed of sound. The drone goes around 250 miles an hour. I don't know if that's 350 kilometers an hour, maybe. You see the fighter jet get really close to the drone, and then it fizzes out. The camera goes crazy. It goes black for a few seconds, and then comes back, and you now see the tail of the drone is still spinning, the propellers, but one of the propellers is now bent like this. The propeller should be like this. It's bent like this. That's what then forced the Americans to scuttle it. Now, one thing I will tell you, because I think it's important to debunk this stuff, and part of what I like to do with you guys is, fill you in what's going on, but also give you some ammunition if you're dealing with the trolls online. So what some of the pro-Russian trolls were saying today, and when you look at the video, you'll see what I'm talking about. Well, if you look at the video, at first, before the Russians hit the drone, each propeller has got 2 yellow stripes at the end of each propeller. In the end of the video, after the Russians hit it, there are no yellow stripes. I looked at this and I'm going, well, in the later part of and by the way, I disproved it totally. In the later part of the video, you can tell it's in shadow now. In the first part of the video, when you check it out later, think about what I'm telling you now. You're going to see the propellers on the back of the plane, and from the nose of the plane is the camera looking at the back. You see the propellers, and you see the propellers have got sunlight on them. You see the propellers have got yellow stripes. After the Russians collide, you then see the propellers are in shade. That's why you can't see the stripes. Well, I took the video. I just used my iPhone and I did a number of different things with shadows and highlights, etc. Basically, I pulled out the background a lot and you could see the stripes. So what happened was, now what's really interesting is this proves that the Russians hit the drone. Now, first of all, the propeller's bent, the Russians hit it. But what also proves it is the fact that you can't see the stripes anymore is because this drone went from sunlight to darkness, because the drone was like this and it went like this. That's because something hit it. How else is the drone going to go boom and suddenly what was in sun is in shade? So anyway, that's what happened with the drone. Now, one thing, I think there's an opportunity and a concern I've got here. I had put several videos actually on TikTok today, if you guys want to check them out. One of them is of Sean Hannity on Fox News, and it's absolutely fascinating. Now, Hannity, very conservative MAGA guy. We know that, and I don't want to generalize about all MAGA, but on the Republican side, the problem people have been MAGA as far as Ukraine goes. Most Republicans, the majority are pretty good on Ukraine. The MAGA folks, not. Trump has been awful, which has not helped. DeSantis is now flip-flopped. DeSantis wanted to provide weapons to Ukraine when the Russians invaded Crimea. Now he totally turned around and doesn't want us to support Ukraine, thinks it's not important. And you've got, let me see what I'm saying really quick with this. Fox, Hannity. So Hannity has been critical of the war, critical of Ukraine, etc. Hannity gets on TV last night and is livid. Livid. Hannity is, like, I would say, the number 2 guy on Fox News. Number 1 is Tucker Carlson. Hannity is talking about how, Vladimir Putin attacked the United States. Russia is our enemy. They're basically, attacking our military, attacking our country. It was an incredibly strong statement from Hannity about Russia, when typically his wing of the Republican Party has been rather apologetic about Russia. This is an opportunity for Biden, and I also think it's a risk. When you watch that video, for me today, and I noticed the news was reacting the same way. When I watched that video today, I was pissed. I mean, it's hard. And again, I say this as an American, I guess. It looked, it made me angry. I wasn't really angry. I mean, I thought it was obnoxious what the Russians did going after our drone, but I wasn't physically angry. I got physically angry watching that video. I felt like they were mocking us. You know what I mean? I felt like they were attacking us. And what worries me with this is, and again, I'm pretty good at this. I always say, one of the things I say about myself is I call myself Cassandra because I'm Greek and very big on mythology, Greek mythology. And in the Greek mythology, there's a tale of a woman named Cassandra who the gods, I forget why, but the gods got pissed at her and decided to punish her. So they had given her the gift of foresight, being able to see the future, but they punished her by making sure that no one would ever believe her predictions. And sometimes I feel like Cassandra because what I'm telling you right now, I think Biden is in a dangerous situation because, oh, hold on, we got a very cool gift with the racing boat there. Thank you, Hazel, for that. That's a very nice one. I know that. Thank you for that. I fear, because I felt watching this drone, it was pissing me off. I fear that Biden could get into a rut here where the Chinese spy balloon was the first problem, right? And he had excuses. I don't disagree with his excuses. The Chinese spy balloon, right? Remember that the spy equipment they had was the size of 3 school buses. So I understand why they didn't want to drop it on just anywhere in America, but it felt like the spy balloon thing went on too long. It felt to me and a lot of people like Biden didn't want to escalate. I'm going to use this word on purpose. Like Biden didn't want to escalate with China by shooting the balloon down. I fear that a same thing, it might be happening with this drone. I am not saying Biden should declare war on Russia. I'm not saying he should nuke Russia, but this was obnoxious. It was when you watch the video, especially, it's infuriating when you watch the video. And I fear that even if it's unfair, and I don't know if it's unfair, even if it's unfair, Biden risks being painted as a little too fearful of upsetting the apple cart, not willing to basically stand, toe to toe or head to head or nose to nose, wherever the expression is, with our adversaries. I think there's a risk there. Now, final point on this. Final point is that I think there's an incredible opportunity too. Incredible opportunity. This Hannity video on Fox News when he was livid at Russia, livid at Putin for what Putin did taking down our drone, okay? They went and they interviewed a Republican senator who was livid. I mean, pissed off the Russians did this. This is an opportunity. And I always talk about how the Republicans are better at messaging than the Democrats. A Republican would understand this. A Democrat does not typically. This is an opportunity. Republicans, Russia did attack our country. I'm not saying we go to war, but Russia attacked our country. Putin does what Putin did what Putin does. Putin loves to attack and do things and then kind of wait and see what we do. And if we don't do much in response, then he does even more. I think this is a great opportunity to get some of the Republicans that maybe were not totally on board on Ukraine, more on board. At the very least, putting Ukraine aside, at the very least, we know we have a problem in this country with Russian disinformation. Unfortunately, I was a Republican, by the way. When I worked on arms control issues in the United States Senate, I worked for a Republican senator, Ted Stevens. I was a Republican. I mean, I know politics from both sides of the aisle, folks. And Republicans were not friends of Russia. Republicans understood what Russia is, what Russia does, the threat that Russia poses, what it did as the Soviet Union, and what it is doing now, which is not that different than the Soviet Union in terms of the mentality coming from the Russians and the Russian government. What worries me is that you've got a chance here. Thank you, Marianne. You've got a chance here to educate the Republicans on what the Russians really are, and you've got Fox News willing to do it for you. That's a big deal, especially since we got to the point where we started losing Republicans in the last few years in terms of their I don't know what word to use, their opposition to Russia. They're concerned about Russia. We saw Republicans start to say, we saw Democrats were more friendly to Russia. Then we saw the polls in the Trump years. Democrats became less friendly to Russia. Republicans became more friendly. Like, it totally became a political thing for both sides. For the record, I was never friendly to Russia, and I'm still not. I have been consistent for 30 years. In any case, so that's it on the drone. I think we've got the possibility of Biden being able to use this drone situation to really shore up some support on the Republicans against Russia and possibly for Ukraine. Thank you for the Shazam there. Who was that inspired woman? And Biden needs to be careful, because I do think he runs the risk of this being perceived as part of a larger pattern that happened with the Chinese drone as well. That people see that foreign adversaries are mocking us and we're not standing up to them. And final point here. Thank you, Zoe. And then I'll get to Elisa's question. Final point here. Yes, in a perfect world, we shouldn't worry about people making fun of Biden. We shouldn't worry about people misinterpreting what he's doing with Ukraine or China or Russia, about people misunderstanding the fact that Biden is not scared of Putin. He's not scared of China, right? But even if you think that's true, in order to be an effective president, you worry about perception. So, because we've got to keep the war funded, first of all, right? I mean, you got to keep the war funded. That's perception, how people perceive it. Second of all, I would say, and I'll conclude with this, China and Russia. I care about what Putin and Xi in China think of Biden. I care about what it is important to us on a foreign policy level and a national security level. Thank you, Big Gator Girl. Whether the Chinese and the Russians look at Biden and think, hey, we can push his buttons and he's not going to push back. He's always afraid of escalation. He's always afraid of things getting out of control, which means we can keep pushing things. Thank you, Crusher, for that. And that sets possibly a precedent for Taiwan, but it also sets a precedent for what Russia might do going forward in Ukraine. So that's it for my drone talk. Elise has a question here, and then we will go on with the news. A lot of news tonight. As I told you guys, we're going for a while tonight. Elise, thank you for the question. Russia has clearly escalated. I agree. We could announce that our response is to send long-range missiles and jets. Yes! Yes, Elise. Yes. I was arguing with somebody today, I think in the comments on TikTok, and the person said, well, we don't want to have a nuclear war with Russia. And I wrote back and I said, there are things short of nuking Moscow that we can do to respond to Russia intentionally attacking our drone and knocking it out of the sky. For example, every time Russia does something outrageous, now I would put Bucha, that initial war crime that we heard about with that city, the town that was just obliterated by the Russians and all the horrible murders of the civilians and everything else. Thank you, Newton. I would certainly put Mariupol. Certainly the attack on the cinema, right? The theater that had these children written on the outside, right? Thank you, user, for that. Whenever Russia does something outrageous like this, or this, knocking down our drone on purpose, attacking our drone, we should make them pay for it by doing something, by giving Ukraine something we weren't going to give them before. And in this case, you say, fine, you attacked our drone. It is an act of war. I mean, you say it's an act of war. Obviously, we're not going to war with you, but you ought to be careful. But because it's an act of war, thank you, 978, and because it's a big deal, we are now going to give Ukraine the long-range drones that we weren't going to give them. We are going to give them the drones that go 200 miles, 300 kilometers. We haven't been doing it yet because we were afraid of escalation, but you've made clear that you escalated. Every time you escalate, right? Bucha, when Bucha happened, we should have done it. Every time the Russians cross a line, whatever that line is, we need to give Ukraine something we weren't willing to give them before, I think. It could be the F-16s at some point, but certainly at least the long-range missiles, that's an easy one. That's an easy one, right? That's easy peasy to do that. And that, by the way, is something short of nuclear war. So I'm not really worried about nuclear war with the Russians because the Russians know they can't win one either with us. But if that's what you're worried about, of course, then let's do something less easily, right? So anyway, there you go. Thank you for the gift there. Who was that really quick? I can't see who that was. It's not showing me. Oh, Kanausi. I think that was Kanausi. All right, guys. Let me tell you really quick. So we've got Discord. Just to tell you really quick, one of the things I do to help Ukraine, we've raised over at this point, I'd say $85,000, $90,000 for Ukraine since the war started. 100% of that money going to Ukraine. I have not taken a dime of it. Thank you, Ocean, for the match wand. But one of the other ways we've been helping Ukraine has been, thank you, Leslie, for the leprechaun. One of the other ways we've been helping them is by fundraising, by doing auctions on my Discord community, which you can find at discord.aravosis.com. You guys over here can simply find it at aravosis.com. The rest of you could go to aravosis.com. I see Lisa and Jerry. I'm going to save your questions right now. You could go to aravosis.com or just go in my profile on TikTok. There's a URL, click it, and all my links are there, including Discord. We've been auctioning off a lot of really cool things from Ukraine. And thank you, Magical Photo. Really cool things from Ukraine. And half of the profits I channel back into Ukraine. The other half I use to support my work because, as I've said before, that was very nice. Whoever just did. By the way, Marcy, thank you for the gamer cat. And who just did the travel thing? Dave, thank you for the travel thing. Oh, and a whale too. You guys are crazy tonight. Dave, thank you for that travel thing. I know that was very nice. And JSS, I know the whale's really nice too. So we'll give the wave for the whale. Sorry, the TikTokers are going nuts on the gifts. I've got to thank them, guys. So I know you YouTubers can never see them. This is how I pay my bills and keep doing the broadcast. So thank you all. And thank you, 978. So the Discord, we've been auctioning off a lot of really cool things from Ukraine. I always sort of show you guys, I'll show you just the one thing. One thing right now I've got is a first day edition stamp from Ukraine showing the Ukrainian tractor pulling a Russian tank. And it's stamped first day edition. And it says, good evening, we are from Ukraine. On the envelope, you guys can see it. But we've got a lot of different sort of cool stuff like that from Ukraine that we're auctioning off. I've auctioned off pieces of a Russian fighter jet. We've got the Azov style bracelets. I've still got one of those. I even auctioned off a piece of the Berlin Wall that I had collected in 1989 in Berlin. Anyway, lots of different stuff. Check it out on the Discord. But also the neat thing is the proceeds, half of it we channel back into Ukraine. That we've been putting into humanitarian aid, but also military. We've helped buy drones. We just helped buy some new camouflage nets for the troops. Thank you, Beirut veteran, for that. And then the other half supports my work, which I very much appreciate because somebody's got to pay my bills. So I appreciate you guys doing this. All right, back to the news. We've got two questions over on YouTube. Jerry Deering, have you heard about Russia flying over U.S. bases, trying to provoke them into shooting at them? No, not necessarily. Thank you, Spirit Seer, for the cap. Here's the thing. The Russians can't fly over. Well, it depends what you mean U.S. bases. I guess it depends where. Thank you, Allie. For example, Russia isn't going to be flying over NATO airspace. They're going to be intercepted. They're not going to be allowed to do that. So what the Russians have been doing, unless I'm missing, I mean, there may be something I didn't see. But what the Russians do and have been doing a lot lately is they're getting very close. They're basically trying to scare the NATO allies. They did it recently. God, where was it? It was in Northern Europe. Was it Estonia? I think it was Estonia in the last couple of days because the Brits and the Germans got together and jointly sort of followed the Russian aircraft to escort them away. It was one of the Baltic. It was Estonia. Thank you. I thought it was. And the Brits and the Germans are currently in charge of the NATO mission, sort of patrolling what's going on to keep the Russians out. So they do that, but they wouldn't be able to fly over an American base, at least an American base that was on U.S. territory or NATO territory. Scandinavia depends which Scandinavia. If it's Sweden, not a member of Ukraine, Sweden and Finland, not members of NATO yet. Norway is. So I'm guessing they screw around. They probably screw around with Sweden and Finland is my guess. But NATO with Norway, they screw around, but they probably less likely to fly over Norway is my guess. All right. One more question we had here. Thank you for that, Jerry. Lisa A. The reaction from the Pentagon said Russia was flying recklessly and unprofessionally. I think it deserves a little stronger response. I agree. One of the things that Republican senator who Sean Hannity had on talking about the drone, the American drone that the Russians forced to death, dumped fuel on, collided with, and then forced into the sea, basically. One of the points he made, and he was totally right, he said they called it like anti-environmental or something like that, what the Russians did. And it was like, he goes, anti-environmental? They basically declared war on you. It was an act of war. It wasn't, I mean, the answer we gave was wimpy. We gave to that. And by the way, that wasn't a mistake. The Biden administration, the White House clearly decided we want to de-escalate this issue with the Russians knocking down our drone. So we're going to say it was reckless, it was unprofessional, and things like that. But we're not going to say anything that makes it sound like we're going to do something in response. They were trying to de-escalate, and that's why they threw in the weird like, and it's anti-environmental. I'm sorry, it sounds wimpy. When you say anti-environmental, the first thing I did when I heard that went, excuse me? I mean, yeah. Of course it hurts the environment, but that's your argument? I mean, these guys just attacked us basically, and you're complaining that they threw some fuel in the water? I mean, come on. It sounds wimpy. So I'm with you, Lisa, absolutely. But again, that was done on purpose. Oops, sorry, hold this. That was done on purpose. Clearly, the Biden administration wanted to de-escalate, and this is a problem I have said they've got from the beginning. Biden really likes to de-escalate when our foreign adversaries challenge us. And yeah, we shouldn't get into nuclear war with them over a drone, but at some point, politically, for your own political survival, but also in terms of the war itself, you got to show some balls at some point. You got to show some backbone. And I'm not convinced. I think, yeah, I think he's doing the wrong thing, but what do you do? Again, I think he's been good. I always say, I give Biden a B+ for how he's handling Ukraine. It ain't an A. In America, an A would be 16 out of 20 in France. I don't know what the rest of the European system is, but an A is like the top grade. B+ is almost there, but not really. And it's definitely one step below. It's sort of half above, one step below. So it's not just shy. It's a little more than just shy of the top grade. He does very well, but could be better. Jerry, from what I saw, it was Syria, and with everything, Syria, that's okay. That makes sense. And with everything on there, why don't we shoot at them? Okay, that's why. That makes sense. Then Jerry was saying the American base he was talking about, or the Americans were Americans in Syria that the Russians were flying over and buzzing our base to basically harass us. That makes sense. Because as I was saying, they wouldn't do it over a NATO country or over the US, because then they'd be in real trouble. There's a number of things the Russians do. First of all, they're kind of jerky. I mean, part of this is just the Russians being jerks, right? They're not doing well in Ukraine, so they just want to be jerks. They want to harass our troops. They want to harass the NATO allies. They want to knock our drones out. They just want to be jerks about it. Part of it also, I think, is that they're hoping to, honestly, if you're somebody who really doesn't want to escalate with Russia, I've told you this before, if I'm Russia, I want to escalate. If I'm Russia, I want to keep doing things that make you afraid of escalating so that you finally say, maybe this war isn't worth it. So to me, that's fly over American bases in Syria so that the Americans go, this is getting really dangerous. This Ukraine thing is pissing off the Russians, and now they're threatening us in Syria. And it's just to create more of a feeling of angst, I think, on the American side and the Allied side, so that eventually, like radiation poisoning, right? It builds up and you go, oh, this is too much. This war is getting too risky. That's my guess as to why they're doing it. All right. Overall, like I said, there's a lot of news tonight. Overall, the number of Russian military operations in Ukraine is decreasing. The Institute for the Study of War, a very good defense think tank, in the U.S. here in Washington, D.C., making sure I didn't miss anything here, in Washington, D.C., was quoting the Ukrainian military saying, Russian offensive actions have decreased significantly over the last week in Ukraine, and listen to this, the daily Russian ground attacks have decreased from 90 to 100 attacks per day to 20 to 29 per day, okay? The Ukrainians are blaming it in part on manpower and equipment losses. Institute for the Study of War agrees. They think the Russian offensive in the area of Luhansk is likely nearly culminating. Culminating is a military term that basically means you're all tuckered out. I mean, you're too tired and you can't go on anymore. Now, you could be too tired because your troops are just exhausted. You've lost too many troops to death, but also to injury. You've lost too many weapons. You don't have enough artillery, enough ammunition. But basically, you don't have enough money to keep the war going. But basically, your offensive, you were on the attack, and finally it was like, whew, and you couldn't go on anymore. The ISW thinks that that is happening shortly here in Luhansk, which is the easternmost province or state in Ukraine. And Russia is fighting specifically here in Bakhmut, right here. But they're also fighting further north in Kremina and Svatove, which are two other really key cities. A little bit further up here, it looks like Russia's culminating in all of those, meaning they've hit the point where they can't go any farther, and now they've just got to dig in. That's great news, right? In other words, keep in mind, this is the big Russian offensive. This is it. From what we know, this was the big counterattack Russia was going to do at spring. It just did it. And as we learned yesterday, Russia increased the amount of land it is occupying in Ukraine in this offensive by 0.04%. That's how much more land Russia controls now, okay, as a result of the offensive. Now, a little more from ISW, Institute for Study of the War. Listen to this. The Institute for the Study of War also believes that the overall Wagner Group offensive, so the Wagner Group is that Russian mercenary group, the soldiers for hire that have been fighting particularly in Bakhmut, right? The Wagner Group offensive in Bakhmut also appears to be nearing culmination, meaning the Wagner Group also is hitting the point where they won't be able to go any further. Quote, manpower, artillery, and equipment losses in fights for Bakhmut will likely constrain Wagner. Russian forces would likely have to commit significant reserves to prevent this culmination. In other words, Russia would have to commit a lot more troops. They may be able to do so, but it seems that the Wagner offensive itself will not be sufficient to seize Bakhmut. So basically, Wagner has hit the end of what it can accomplish. Russia could keep going, but Russia's going to have to move in troops from elsewhere if they want to keep trying to get this city. Again, great news, because again, it means the Russians have spent a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of men and military equipment going after a town for almost 9 months now, and they still don't have it. And now they've kind of hit their limit. More on this regarding the Russian losses in Bakhmut. Listen to this. So again, Bakhmut, town in eastern Ukraine, right here, totally insignificant town, doesn't matter. Don't mean to offend the Ukrainians. It really doesn't matter. The Russians have been trying to get it for 9 months. We really don't know why. The Ukrainians are fighting, which kind of makes sense, though. The Ukrainians are fighting back because it's kind of a meat grinder for the Russians. The Ukrainians have the advantage in Bakhmut. The numbers from NATO are that for every one Ukrainian soldier killed defending Bakhmut, 5 Russian attackers have died. So 5 to 1. Typically, in a battle like this, you would see 3 to 1, according to the experts. The Ukrainians say it's 7 to 1, but let's take the NATO number 5 to 1. If you're the Ukrainians, you say, look, the Russians are getting destroyed in this town. We've got to fight them somewhere. Why not fight them in this town where they're really just getting destroyed? So that's, we think, I think a lot of the experts think, is why the Ukrainians continue to keep fighting in Bakhmut, okay? Now, listen to this. Regarding Russian losses in Bakhmut, the British military advisor Ian Stubbs said today that since May last year, between 20 to 30,000 Wagner and regular Russian forces have been killed and wounded in the area around Bakhmut alone. 20 to 30,000 Russian troops have been killed or injured, put out of commission around Bakhmut in the battle for Bakhmut, and they still don't have the city. Now, it is thought that the Russians are now at around a 200,000 number of troops killed and injured both. They combine the numbers together. So 10%, 10 to 15% of Russia's overall military losses in this war have been just because of the town of Bakhmut that doesn't matter, and that the Russians are still fighting at and not doing very well with, right? Let me see this. A huge loss. All right, let me move on to the next story here. Ukrainian counteroffensive. So having said all of that, and I always tell you guys, I try to be honest with you. I will not just give you the happy news. There is legitimate concern. Oh, we've got a whale gift on TikTok. Thank you, Crusher. We'll do the wave. Thank you very much for that. You guys are being very nice tonight with the gifts. I appreciate that. The Ukrainian counteroffensive. So we've been hearing for several months that the Ukrainians are getting ready to strike back against the Russians to try to get back as much of their land as they can. Because remember, again, the Russians are controlling about 18% of Ukraine. All of this, the Russians are still controlling, okay? And the Ukrainians want to get back as much as they can. we are, there is definitely a lot of discussion. Oh, I'm sorry. And the thinking is that in the next 6 to 8 weeks, the Ukrainians may launch their counterattack. Okay. So what would that be? 6 to 8 weeks puts you end of April through May, maybe. So end of April to mid-May. The concern, though, is Ukraine's got problems too. Ukraine actually has a lot of the same problems Russia has. There are manpower problems. It's not clear, a lot of their troops have been killed. A lot of their troops have been injured. The estimates are, putting my light down a little, that Russia, as I said, killed and injured. The number of troops killed and injured has been 200,000 for Russia. The estimates are it's around 100,000 for Ukraine. That number finally has been floating around the last few days. That's a lot because it's half of Russia, but Ukraine is a population of around 43 million. Russia's a population of 153 million. So Russia's 3 times the population, but only has 2 times the casualties of Ukraine. So Ukraine has taken it pretty hard. Ukraine is getting a lot of new troops, but the new troops, just like the Russian new troops, they're new. They're not going to be as seasoned. They're not as expert as the troops that were fighting before. Ukraine is having a big problem with ammunition, especially with artillery. We are trying to get them what we can, but it's really not clear where NATO is going to get this artillery from, right? So there's a lot of, Ukraine has a lot of headwinds right now. There have even been, and I haven't been able to find all the information on this, but I saw mentioned with some of the military guys on Twitter this morning that there was a Ukrainian, I'm forgetting his name, who was, I believe, probably with the military, speaking out about this and saying that maybe it's better that Ukraine doesn't counterattack. Maybe it's better, he probably said that Ukraine dig in and let the Russians just keep wasting away because it's not clear Ukraine has enough resources. He got into trouble for it because the Ukrainians said, stop saying that. But it's something a lot of people are worried about. So again, Ukraine's been doing well, but they've got a lot of stuff holding them back as well. In any case, the Russians, there's news today that the Russians are digging in a lot in Crimea right now, which is interesting. Crimea, territory in southern Ukraine that the Russians invaded and stole in 2014. The Russians are digging in a lot, which means the Russians are worried that Ukraine may make a push for Crimea in their counteroffensive. That's interesting. Thank you, Flower Lady, for that. That's interesting because obviously Ukraine really wants Crimea. Crimea is considered like the feather in the cap of what Ukraine could do and should do to get its territory back. But the fact that the Russians are digging in means the Russians are worried that Ukraine's planning that. Now another, we got another, this is a cool, the UFO. Thank you, Dark Phoenix, for the UFO landing. That was a very cool one. Thank you. Vuhledar. Let me read you this one too. Like I said, I'm sorry. There's a lot of news today. All of this I think is really interesting though. Let me, hang on a second. This is from the British Ministry of Defense today. Listen to this. Over the last weeks, this is all part of the same discussion we've been having though. Over the last week, Russian attempts to, this is some good news though, okay? We've been talking about the bad news, concerns about Ukraine. Now we've got the good news. Listen to this. Over the last week, Russian attempts to assault the Donetsk Oblast town of Vuhledar, handy dandy map, Vuhledar down more or less around here, okay? More or less around here. Still along the front between the Russians and the Ukrainians. Thank you for the dancing beaver, Panya. The front goes more or less kind of like this, more or less, okay? So the front is here between the Ukrainians and the Russians, the town of Vuhledar. That's the town that if you've been watching my show, you've heard me talk about where the Russians were just obliterated. I mean, they lost thousands of troops, I think in one battle alone. What's really interesting about it is with that town, this is the town where the Ukrainians basically left the main road open, but it's like a road that can take, one tank at a time. They left the road open, but all along the road, like in the fields, they put mines, like anti-tank mines. They then waited for the Russians to try to take the town. And when the Russians came like one by one towards the town, the Ukrainians started dropping artillery on them, everything else. So the Russians had to turn around. Well, if you're on a 1-lane road, right, and you're in a tank, Thank you, Louis, for the superpower hands. And you're in a tank. How do you turn around? You're in a tank. You've got to go like this and go off the road. Well, as soon as the tanks got off the road, they exploded because it was all landmines. So they intentionally left the road free so the Russians thought they were safe. Because the Russians are thinking, who the hell would put landmines in a field? Wouldn't you put it on the road? Not if you're Ukrainian. So they tricked the Russians into coming in. They hit them with artillery. The Russians then turn around in the field. The tanks blow up. Now you've got blown up tanks at the front and the end of the Russian convoy. So the rest of the convoy can't get out of there. They're stuck in the middle, and they know if they go into the field, they're going to blow up. So they're sitting there in their tanks, and the Ukrainians just come in and blow them up. That's Vuhledar. Horrific error for the Russians. Webadeb is saying newbie error. Apparently, what I was reading was this was a lot of the new Russian troops who got slaughtered because the Russians didn't train them. They were not trained on Ukrainian battle tactics. And apparently, thank you for the galaxy there, Dark Phoenix. Had they been trained on Ukrainian battle tactics, they would have known this is something the Ukrainians do, apparently. So that's Vuhledar, okay? The Russians obliterated in Vuhledar. So what do you think the Russians are doing, my friends? The Russians are doubling down and going after Vuhledar. Like I said, this is a great story. Listen to this. So this is from the British Ministry of Defense. Over the last week, Russian attempts to assault the Donetsk town of Vuhledar have almost certainly slowed. This follows repeated, extremely costly failed attacks over the previous 3 months. So they've been doing this for 3 months, attacking, losing everybody, attacking again. One factor in Russia's heavy losses in this sector has been Ukraine's successful adoption of, listen to this, of remote anti-armor mine systems. So Ukraine using mines. The RAM is a specialist artillery shell. So it's a shell that you shoot into the air and can go, 20 miles, whatever it is. Okay, listen to this, which scatters anti-armor mines up to 17 kilometers away. 17 kilometers, I'm going to guess 12, 13 miles distance from the firing unit. In some instances, Ukraine, so basically, they've got landmines, but anti-tank mines that shoot out of an artillery gun and can go like 13 miles. And then the mines go, and then they scatter all over the place once they hit the 13 miles. So what the Ukrainians are doing, listen to this. The Ukraine has launched the mines over and behind advancing Russian troops. So the Russians are coming at them. The Ukrainians go over their head with the mines and lay the mines behind the Russians who are coming towards the Ukrainians. And then once the Ukrainians attack, the Russians turn around and try to go back, and they run over the landmines because the Russians don't realize the area they came in on that they thought was safe now has a bunch of landmines. I mean, it's, but it gets better. Russia's only notable recent tactical success has been in the Bakhmut sector, which is dominated by the Wagner Group mercenaries, currently engaged in a public feud with the Russian Ministry of Defense. Wagner Group is run by Prigozhin, who's a Russian billionaire. Thank you, Yak Goddess, for the wand there. Is run by Prigozhin, and Prigozhin has been in an open fight with the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Ministry, even though they're. So he's got mercenary troops. Prigozhin does, right? These are, thank you, 978. These are soldiers for hire. They are fighting in Ukraine pretty much alongside Russian troops, but kind of doing their own thing, but they're there too. So the Wagner guys mostly have been fighting to try to take Bakhmut, right? He's been kind of a jerk, Prigozhin. So the Ministry of Defense is so pissed at him that the Ministry of Defense several weeks ago basically cuts off the Russian Ministry of Defense cuts off the ammunition for Prigozhin soldiers. These are Russian soldiers fighting in Ukraine. They cut off their ammunition because they were pissed at him, right? Well, then because Prigozhin has been making a lot of I would say he's been challenging Putin politically, really. He's clearly making a run, I think, at Putin's job. Putin finally figured it out and it had enough. So what Putin did is over the last several weeks, Putin has been sending all of Prigozhin's men into Bakhmut, into the meat grinder where they're getting killed. And he just keeps sending more and more and more of them from all over Ukraine now, the Wagner guys, and sending them into Bakhmut to be killed. I mean, literally, just to kill all of his men so he no longer has his men. Now, mind you, these are also Russians. I mean, they're a private army, but they're fighting for Russia. Why would you want to kill them? If you're Vladimir Putin and you want to get revenge, that's why you kill them. So that's who Prigozhin is, okay? Listen to this. There's been a public feud with the Russian Ministry of Defense. Listen to this line now. This is the best part. Thank you, Crusher, for the superpower. There is a real, this is British Ministry of Defense. There is a realistic possibility that Russia's Ministry of Defense has been insistent in its drive for success in Vuhledar, partially because it wants its own success to compete with Wagner's achievements. So what ISW is saying is they think the reason the Russians keep attacking the town of Vuhledar and getting their troops slaughtered every time, and they keep coming back for more and more, is because of their ego, because the Ministry of Defense wants a victory so it can turn around to the guy they're in competition with, Prigozhin, who runs the private mercenary army, and tell him, look, you did well in Bakhmut, we got Vuhledar. That's the only reason they keep going back and losing thousands of men in this stupid battle for a town that they can't win, because they're in a pissing match against each other, the Russian military. I mean, I just, I mean, again, I laugh because this is great. If you're Russian, this sucks. But if you're Ukrainian or anybody who's supporting Ukraine, this is great news, but it's insane. Now, another way you can support my work, I do have a Patreon as well. It's patreon.com/Aravosis. You guys can see it there on TikTok, on YouTube. For the TikTokers, lower my lights now that the sun is finally setting. For the TikTokers, you guys can go to my profile and look at the little link tree link there, and you can see my Patreon. Basically, Patreon is a really nice way to support creators by giving them an automatic gift every month. So you can give them $5 a month, $10 a month. Some people give me 20. Some guys, wonderful Arctic Legacy, is giving me $100 a month. And a lot of little benefits. You can you become a VIP in our Discord community, which gives you access to certain auctions, our Saturday morning show, and actually doing it again this Saturday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern time US, with the TikTok paid subscribers and the Discord paid subscribers. But it's just a really nice way of being able to help out and support my work, because I do this for free. I've been doing it full time since the war broke out, and I literally pay my bills with your guys' gifts. So if you can help, I'd very much appreciate it on Patreon. Thank you for that. All right, a little more news. I'm telling you, all this news is important. In Axios reports today, very good publication, by the way. Axios reports today, in mid-February, Israel, the ground, saying, thank you, Panya, for the groundhog. I might have missed that. In mid-February, Israel approved export licenses for an anti-drone system for Ukraine. That's good. I mean, Israel, not been so helpful, right? That's really good. Israel basically was worried, or has been worried, that if they help Ukraine, the Russians will curtail Israel's access to flying over Syria and bombing pro-Iranian militia, this kind of thing, right? Thank you, Inspired Woman, for the leprechaun. So, Israel didn't want to rock the boat and get the Russians sort of cutting off Israel's access. The fact that Israel is providing even an anti-drone system, approved an export license for an anti-drone system, okay? What is happening is, and I mean, I got to tell you, I read this and I was like, this is like the criticism we had of Germany. Now, Germany's been really good now, but this is the criticism we had of Germany in the beginning. Israel isn't giving Ukraine the weapon system. Israel's offering to sell it to them. I mean, you just hear this stuff and you're like, seriously? Oh, sorry, Daniel. I didn't know you were there. Sorry. I was trying to give you praise. I didn't really even realize you were there tonight. Sorry. I thought it was rude if I said somebody is helping me out and I didn't say who. It would be rude. Okay, I won't do it again, but thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. Anyway, now having said that, some of the other NATO allies are also selling equipment to Ukraine, and Ukraine's been provided with money by the U.S. and others to enable them to buy some of these systems. So it's not unheard of. I just think it's still a little crass. Nonetheless, we don't know yet. All right, I will do this one quickly, but the United Nations Office of the High Commissioner on Human Rights put out a report today accusing the Russians of clear war crimes in Ukraine and possibly even crimes against humanity. Including attacks on civilians and energy-related infrastructure. This is from the United Nations, mind you. The United Nations report concluding this. Attacks on civilians and energy-related infrastructure, willful killings, unlawful confinement, torture, rape and other sexual violence, as well as unlawful transfers and deportations of children. A former detainee underwent beatings as a punishment for speaking Ukrainian and for not remembering the lyrics of the anthem of the Russian Federation. This pattern of torture may amount to crimes against humanity because what they're seeing is it is a pattern. It is a war, more or less. I'm not the war crime expert. I am a lawyer, but I'm not a war crime expert. But the war crimes are individual crimes. A soldier commits a crime, a war crime, so to speak, right? A crime against humanity is when it's systematic, right? When basically it's not, oh, that soldier tortured people who spoke Ukrainian, he was a bad guy and goes to jail. It's he was given orders from up above to go after Ukrainians and to torture anybody speaking Ukrainian, anybody showing any kind of nationalism, right? That it was an effort across the Russian military to do this. That's what turns it potentially into a crime against humanity, because it is a systematic crime against an entire population, right? Again, crimes against the population, right? Right. I mean, you get the resonance of that from World War II, from Serbia going into Kosovo, other places, Rwanda. I mean, right. Rwanda, the Middle East. I mean, Africa, lots of things like that. Looking here. All right. I'll skip that. It mentioned the deportation of children as well, of course. Finally, France is delaying, listen to this. France is delaying a European Union ammunition deal for Ukraine. According to the Telegraph, France was accused of slowing down a European Union 2 billion euro or $2.12 billion package for purchasing weapons for Ukraine by demanding that the ammunition be manufactured inside the EU. Paris wants a guarantee that all the munition will be bought within the EU. Now, I get it. Our country does this kind of stuff too, but we're trying to stop a genocide. Maybe, and there's not enough ammunition. There's not enough. Maybe it would be okay if some of the European Union money got spent outside of the European Union, if you're able to find weapons that you can't find otherwise. I mean, that's what it should say. It should say preference goes to European sources if they can, if there is not a better alternative. That would be the thing. If there's a better alternative, a quicker alternative, then you go to the quicker alternative, right? You don't sit here and fricking do that, I mean, the trolls are pissed today, aren't they? Well, I just noticed the trolls. I wasn't paying attention to the trolls on TikTok. Once I get to sort of the Q&A feature, I can, and boy, they're not in a happy mood today, are they? Anyway, all right, done with that. Do check out our store as well. We're not done. We're doing the Q&A now, but I've got a store as well, store.aravosis.com. You can find the store link in my link on TikTok. We've got a lot of cool Ukrainian stuff. 50% of the proceeds go to Ukraine. And for you all, you can go to aravosis.com and find the same thing. It's a lot of really cool stuff. CNN is just reporting private Russian army chief accuses Kremlin of acting like a child. Not sure. I'd have to see I'm not sure what that. I know you have to squeeze it in there, but I'm not sure what that means entirely. Like what that was. Thank you, Bonnie, for the gamer cat. All right, let's go and do questions now. So on TikTok, submit the questions via the Q&A link. On YouTube, obviously use not just YouTube. You guys are a lot of different services. Use the comment box at the bottom. And if you can keep the gifts coming, I appreciate it, because it supports my work and helps me keep doing this, because I am doing it for free and I've been doing it full time for a year. But you don't have to. Obviously, questions are free, or questions can be paid. It's up to you. Who was that for the Galaxy there really quick? That was Crusher and Kenny for the rose, and Bonnie for the robe. Lots of stuff. Okay, you TikTokers are out of control tonight. Thank you, Big Gator Girl, for the hanging lights. Thank you. That I know, $1 for every troll. No, that is true. That is true. I ought to tell people that every time you see a troll, give. But I don't want to. You guys might go broke with that. All right, let me pull up TikTok here. I do love that boat. Thank you. That boat thing is one of the newer ones, and it's very cool. Oops. Oh, there it is. Timothy. It always puts it in a different place. Oh, and Happy Beach for the garland. Thank you. All right. TikTok. Oop, that's my TikTok. Q&A. Here we go. Q&A. Boy, the Russians are. Now, I will say this. It always intrigues me when the trolls kind of go like especially crazy on TikTok, because it means something's going on. What's going on right now is the drone issue. And clearly, I think people were given orders, go out there and just get the message out there because of the troll thing. You know, that's what's going on. I mean, because of the drone thing, they're freaking out a little bit. Thank you, Enamored, for the donut. Thoughts on Central Asian countries? Nice place to visit? I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure what you're asking there. Hey, Bonnie, thank you for that. We've talked about Georgia before, but I'm not sure what you mean by Central Asia. But we have talked about that. No great news happening there now. Thank you, Bonnie and Crusher, for the boat. The war games. Thoughts on Russia, China, and Iran having war games together? I saw that. I mean, it's like the new axis of evil, Russia, China, and Iran. I'm like, okay, whatever. I mean, you know what I mean? I mean, they're doing war games together. I just don't know that I care. I mean, the Iran thing is certainly concerning because, unfortunately, the war, Malayethos? That's interesting. Yes, they do. They do. The only thing that would worry me is, Iran getting closer to Russia and Iran getting closer to China. That's not great. That's not great. Thank you, Iggy. Ben, yes. Donald Steele. Thank you. Donald just did a Patreon subscription. Thank you for that, Donald. I appreciate that. I was looking at the Q&A questions for TikTok and it popped up on my screen. Ben is asking in a super chat question on YouTube, did you see that an FSB building, FSB is kind of the follow-on to the KGB in Russia, caught fire in the Rostov region of Russia today? Yes, I did. Thank you, Woodworker, for the cactus. I didn't mention it only because it's not terribly clear what happened. I mean, it's a little suspicious that it basically KGB, Nouveau KGB building burned down in Russia today. Thank you, Woodworker. I saw the Ukrainians weigh in, and then they kind of said we had nothing to do with it, but we're taking pleasure in it. Hard to say. I mean, it's possible. It's possible, that the Ukrainians or somebody else did it. Thank you, 978, for the wand. And who's the cactus? Just having fun, Canada. Oh, hey, Canada, for the groundhog. So yes, I did see it, but I didn't mention it because I wasn't completely convinced as to who, and frankly, we had so much news today that I had to cut some stuff. So that's why, but yeah, it's worth mentioning. Did they really? Otan Bot, who I trust. Wagner Group has placed ads on, all right, I don't want to say this word on TikTok or YouTube and get into trouble. Starts with a P, Ornhub. Basically, it's a website to watch X-rated videos on. Let's put it that way. A porn website. Okay, that's what he said. A porn website to recruit more. So Wagner Group has placed ads on the porn website to recruit more fighters. The ads use vulgar language and images to persuade viewers to join Wagner instead of watching porn. Oh, those Russians. I mean, Cornhub, exactly. Yeah, our Discord, somebody was talking about this last night, and our Discord, the Autobot, it's automatic, that searches for bad language, wouldn't let them post about it because it was the P word, porn, which I thought was very funny. That was very funny. But yeah, ads for Wagner, it is desperate. It's good. It's good though, because it is desperate and it shows that they're not doing well, which is great. All right. Keep your questions coming, folks. Let me look TikTok. Interesting question. I don't know. Kevro is saying, why doesn't Biden offer to remove the Trump-era tariffs to get China to end cooperation with Russia? That's interesting. Thank you, Jens or Jens, for the butterflies. Well, okay. Domestically, getting rid of the tariffs on China helps the U.S. Domestic, because I would guess most of our stuff here is made in China. A hell of a lot of it is. And the tariffs increase the prices here. And especially, I had mentioned this, by the way, with the inflation concerns. The inflation concerns we should have immediately got rid of the tariffs. And Biden should have said, that's one of his inflation fighting members or measures. The problem is the Republican Party, MAGA in particular, loathes China. I'm even saying it like Trump, China. They hate the Chinese. they don't refer to China, they refer to the Chinese Communist Party. So whenever they talk about China, they wouldn't say the tariffs don't hurt China. They would say the tariffs don't hurt the Chinese Communist Party. They're really hung up on it. It's their big, they hate it. And therefore, my guess is Biden might have even considered lifting the tariffs, but there's two problems. One, you'd have Republicans blowing up about it and saying you're soft on China, blah, blah, blah. The other problem is you'd want some kind of quid pro quo. You'd want some kind of you scratch my back, I scratch yours with the Chinese, and you wouldn't just want to give it to them for free. Now, I agree with you if they'd be willing to. Well, here's the problem. I guess here's the problem. We'd have to know what the Chinese are doing in order to know they're not doing it. And I don't know to what degree. I think we know in terms of weapons. I don't know if we know in terms of everything else. But I agree with you. It's an interesting idea to try to do some kind of trade-off with the Chinese about Ukraine. And again, this is where, as I say, Democrats suck at messaging. I would have made it an inflation thing. I would have told people how much, X% of American goods are made in China and the prices went up 20% because of the tariffs, right? And we're going to lower them. It would be a great idea politically. Thank you, Truthful. But Otanbot, just because it's a great idea doesn't mean anybody's going to do it. That's exactly it. Yeah, David Peacock is saying on TikTok, tariffs only raise prices of goods in the USA. In other words, inflation. That's exactly it. I was saying from the beginning, make this part of the inflation fighting proposal to lift the and again, it's politics. If you're a Democrat, you want to take a jab at Republicans. If you're a Republican, you want to take a jab at Democrats. You accuse Trump of causing part of the inflation with the China stuff. I mean, my point is there's even a political reason for Biden to do it. But, this is not Democrats. Republicans are great at messaging. Democrats are not. What do you do? Inflation right now is down to 6 point something percent. It was up at 8 or higher, which we were very worried about. It's now been a couple months I think 3 months in a row, it's been around 6 or so. I was watching this the other day when the numbers came out a couple days ago. It is, the experts are now thinking inflation is definitely lower, but the concern is it's for America, that's too high. Our goal is 2%. And 6.1, just here for Cyrus is saying. Yeah, so 6.1 is still way too high. The concern, though, is with all the banking stuff that was going on, the European Central Bank, I guess, just raised interest rates like 0.5 point or something that was considered pretty significant. My dog is hacking below me. But there's concern as to whether the U.S. interest rates maybe should stay, let go. Don't raise the rates for a little bit until we sort of, see what's going on. Why do Democrats suck at messaging? Trust me, this has been 20 years of me arguing this. I don't know. I really don't. Republicans just have a better head for messaging. They really do. In terms of America, the Republican Party versus the Democratic Party, I don't know why. Now, it's not always the case, right? I mean, Biden out-messaged Trump, so to speak. Well, it wasn't just that. I mean, COVID helped too, but Democrats do win elections. But overall, there are ample opportunities of things where you'd say, oh my God, why aren't the Democrats jumping? And then you see things where you go, of course the Republicans are jumping because that's a great political issue to jump on. They're just better at it. I don't know. It's weird. Here. Oh, that's interesting. All right, so I pull up TikTok again. Oops. my ALEXA just tried to chime in. I'm like, don't you talk to me right now. But that's a good idea though on that. Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan, I don't know anything going on right now though. I just don't with Ukraine and everything. I don't think there's anything going on with them and with regards to Ukraine. You know what I mean? Is the war almost over? I don't think so. Now, the one thing that's going to be interesting with the war, as I said, in the coming months is, both Russia and Ukraine have got problems as far as the ammunition and everything else they've got, as far as having enough troops, having enough ammunition. So once Ukraine does this offensive, I think it's going to be very interesting to see where things are. Does Ukraine get a lot of its land back? Now, my guess is at the very least, my best is that at the very least, Ukraine wants to get the land that Russia stole this last year. Okay. This stuff. Obviously, they want to get Crimea, but at the very least, I think they need to get back to where they were when the Russians invaded, which was here. Now, that's not enough, obviously, but that at least gets you somewhere. Yes, I did see the footage of the drone. We actually talked about it at the beginning of the show. Alaska, I'm going to say Alaska relics or AC relics. But yeah, we talked about it at the beginning of the show a lot. Jake from State Farm, do you think if Wagner loses in Bakhmut, they will be done fighting? Well, I mean, Wagner may not have anybody else to fight with. It looks right now, Institute for the Study of War agrees that Bakhmut, pretty much the Russians have been 9 months of trying to take the town, and the Russian offensive is pretty much petered out. It's grinding to a halt, and the question now becomes: Bakhmut does not have enough troops. Putin basically ensured that they were killed. Putin sent a bunch of the Wagner troops to Bakhmut in the last few weeks just to kill them, to get them, basically throw them at the Ukrainians and let them die, because he's trying to water down the power of the oligarch who controls them. And Bakhmut doesn't have enough troops now to keep fighting there. So the question with Bakhmut is whether Putin wants to keep fighting there, but Wagner doesn't really have a choice at this point. No, they don't. Oops, just looking here. Thank you for the match wand. I don't know what a match wand is. I just think of a magic wand. It says match wand. I don't know why it says that, but thank you for that regardless. Was it Bonnie? Let me see here. All right. We'll do a few more questions here. Why didn't the Russian jet shoot down the drone? Because that would have been too obvious. That would have been too obvious. Yeah. Like that would have been perceived as, literally video of the Russians shooting at Americans. There's something throwing gasoline on it. First of all, okay. The experts are saying today they do not think that the Russians intentionally collided with the drone. The reason is because if you collide with the drone, everyone's been saying that Russian pilot is very lucky he's not dead or drowned or drowning right now, because his plane should have crashed. His plane absolutely should have crashed with hitting the drone like that. It was incredibly dangerous and incredibly stupid. And the thinking is the pilot is a really bad pilot, and that's why it happened. Now, having said that, it's not enough to call it, people kept saying accidental. Well, there's accidental and there's accidental. I mean, yeah, maybe he accidentally bumped our drone while he was intentionally trying to force our drone down by attacking it, right? They were throwing the gasoline all over it. They were trying to basically kill the drone and shoot it and knock it down, but they didn't intend to bump it down. So sure, but calling it accidental is a bit much. Oh yeah, the propeller tip is bent on the drone. I mean, you can see. I mean, I've got it here. I mean, well, I can show you guys. You guys have seen the video, haven't you? I mean, I can show you the video. It's like, I think it's 20 seconds or something. You guys have seen the drone video, haven't you? I mean, this is from the Department of Defense, so there's no TikTok. There is no copyright on this. It is federal. I'm a lawyer. This is from the federal government. It's legal. Like, the federal government is not allowed to copyright anything. I'll show you really quick, guys. Hold on then. All right, hang on. Drone footage. Okay, here we go. I don't think there's any sound on this. No. All right. I will show TikTok first, and then I'll show YouTube. You are going to see him try to dump gasoline or diesel fuel on top of the drone. He comes by, this is the Russian with the first time, throwing fuel all over it. Now you see the propellers in back spinning nicely. Oops, go here. This propeller spinning. And oops, you're going to see in a minute the Russians come for a second time. And then I'll show you guys. Now he's coming in for a second time. He's going to hit it this time. Now at the very end, you're going to see very quickly the propellers. I'm going to come in closer. The propeller spinning. You're going to notice the shade because it's been knocked into a different position. And you're going to see one of the propellers bent 45 degrees. Hang on. It's coming. I didn't edit the video. This is from the Pentagon. So I think it's like a 20-second gap like this or whatever. It better still be going. Did I get the right one? Hold on. I gave you the one that was cut off at the end. Son of a bitch. Arg! Here it is. Okay, hold on. I'm going to pull it to the very end here now. All right. Here we go. This is the second one. All right. Look at that one propeller. See how it's bent 45 degrees? Let me I'll go and I will show you. There it is. You can see that if you saw it in context, you'd see it was bent 45 degrees. Now, as I said, to me, I watched this video and it just pissed me off. It really pissed me off watching this. Okay, let me, get this started. All right, for you guys. Oops. And again, evil TikTok or evil YouTube. This is copyright free. It's from the Department of Defense. So that's the first run where he's trying to throw the fuel on it. And then the second run, so you see the blades are normal. They're not bent in, and the blades have sun on them. You can see the yellow and everything. After this next run, you're going to see the blades are shadowed, which means it's changed position. See, it comes in, knocks out the camera for a couple seconds, and then at the end, you're going to get a quick look at the, here we go. Look at that curved drone. Look at the curved, see, the one curved propeller. Yeah. It's more than 45 because it's almost curved in like this. Yeah. No, they hit it. He hit it. I mean, and this is why the Russians were so embarrassed because, and of course the Russians just lied and lied and lied about it today. I mean, it was like, it's a lie. We didn't hit that drone. And of course, the Americans were just going, oh yes, please keep going, go, or is it go, as Jon Stewart says, go on, I mean, oof. Yeah. No, very bad. What else we got here? Mike is saying Russia has an extreme shortage of experienced pilots, 1.5 years minimum. Some only have months of experience. Yeah, well, and they lost a lot of them at the beginning of the war. The Russians really, okay, Evolving Fate, good to see you. Thanks for joining us today. The Russians had, they lost a lot of men I don't think they have women, men at the beginning of the war. And yeah, I was reading too. It can take isn't it? Am I wrong? I thought I read not even a year and a half. I thought I read that it can take 7 years to become a really expert, fighter jet pilot. That these guys lost incredible amounts of experience. Oh, Russian trolls. Thank you, Mod. That was good. What else we got? I don't mind sort of grabbing questions from here too. Did you hear about the Russian prisoners being released to go fight? I'm not sure. No, I'm not sure. Oh, I believe the White House. The White House hasn't said anything we can't believe. That's not true. It's not true. Oh, be careful, tattooed mom. As long as I was going to say the troll, the mods may not realize you're not for everybody on TikTok, because we get so many trolls. Be careful if you make jokes and stuff like tattooed mom. If I didn't know you, I'd think you were a troll saying you're wrong, smiley face. Just beware. We've banned people before getting confused as to who they are. I just saw that. I went, who is that? And then I went, I know her. What else we got? I am serious about the White House. The White House doesn't. Come on. The White House doesn't. The White House has a record of lying about Ukraine. Come on. I mean, let's be serious here. Again, there's a lot of good Republicans supporting the war, and Biden too. And I don't knock Mitch McConnell and the rest of them. They've been great. Lindsey Graham. I can't stand Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham's been amazing in his support for the war. Absolutely amazing. So, try to put the partisanship aside for this issue, because I think it's too important. I really do. But come on, Biden lies. Biden, come on. This is an interesting question from Caro. Will it help Ukraine to get the fighter jets? If the Russians don't use it because Ukrainians will shoot them down on air defense, don't the Russians see that's a question I've been having, and I don't know. The thing is, I've not seen any articles about this. Clearly, the Ukrainians think they need fighter jets desperately. Clearly, the Americans think the Ukrainians don't. I mean, Biden has said repeatedly, I didn't say Biden, but his top defense folks say they don't need, this is not the priority for Ukraine. It's not what they need right now. So I don't know, Biden started the war to make money. What? I mean, like that. I deserve a gift just for that. So Biden started the war to make money. Yeah, me too. I'm getting rich. Woo! Come on. Oh my God. Thank you, Marcy, for the glasses. I appreciate that. The fighters, I think we mean fighters, not bombers. We're not giving them bombers anyway. We're giving them fighters. Yeah. Or we are not. The polls are. Thank you. Who was that? Real quick. The paper crane was from Magical. Sunglasses from Marcy. User with some roses. Big Gator with the flowers. Inspired Woman with the flowers. Thank you, guys. So I don't know what else is going on. I mean, we can. I'm not going to go too much longer because it's 7:25. So we try not to go too crazy here. Thank you, Nancy, for the galaxy. I'll wrap up because we've been almost an hour and a half now. This was a good one. Like I said, there was a lot of news today, and I probably could have cut some, but I didn't. I cut what I could. I didn't feel comfortable cutting any more news because I felt like this stuff was too important. Like all of this was even the Israel thing, it was very interesting. It's a small point, but Israel giving any help to Ukraine or offering to give help is very interesting. That's interesting as far as where things go from here. I think that's right. Tomorrow's St. Patrick's Day. I am not Irish, but in America, we celebrate because it's who we are. I don't know. It's like an American thing. We have so many Irish here in America and Chicago. By the way, in Chicago, where I'm from, okay, I'm going to show you really quick before we go. In Chicago, where I am from, some of you will know, some of you foreigners will not. Hold on. Because Chicago has such an Irish community, because Chicago, where is this? Chicago has such a strong Irish community. Every St. Patrick's Day, where's the video? Every St. Patrick's Day, they dye the river. Now this one, here we go. I hope it's going to be time lapsed. Oh, it's not going to be time lapsed. Come on, guys. You got to give us a time lapse of this. Well, I'll show you really quick. Okay, I'm going to find you a time lapse because this is too good. Hold on. Time lapse, Chicago River dye. But basically, the city of Chicago dyes the Chicago River green for St. Patrick's Day. Chicago River is a huge river. And here's the time lapse. Okay. I'm a little worried. Okay, let's not do music. TikTok freaks out about music. Stop that. See, I'm a little worried. Let's try this one. Okay. Here we go. Here, you can see pretty much. But this little speedboat goes back and forth and just runs the dye through the river. Here, I'll let you guys see. You can sort of see close up of it, and just goes back and forth and back and forth. See, like it's running all the little speedboats with the dye, and it's it's a beautiful like shamrock green. It's really pretty, and they just go back and forth and they dye the river. It's the coolest thing. I've never gone. Oh, of course they use environmentally safe dye. They have to. Oh yeah, of course, because it goes right into Lake Michigan. I mean, they're good about that. But it's really neat, and it's something that a lot of people don't realize. I think even Americans don't totally realize it. Google it. It's the coolest thing. Chicago River and dye, DYE. And Tampa does it too. It's the coolest thing. Yeah, very cool. You celebrated in Malta? That's funny. St. Patrick's Day? You Irish, you're everywhere. Yeah. All right, guys. I'll do the quick wrap up of the issues we covered. Just remember Saturday morning, as I said, we are going to be doing a coffee talk, as I call it, on TikTok, but also on Discord, where we do a hangout for about an hour, actually. I try to make it half an hour, but it usually ends up being an hour. And we just hang and talk about shooting the breeze, usually not politics, but sometimes politics. But it's a very fun hangout. It's for the paid TikTok subscribers, however the subscription thing works on TikTok, and for the paid Discord subscribers. You guys can just find it here at 10 a.m. Eastern Time US on Discord. Go to Discord. You'll see the top video section, and you'll see $5. It says like $5 coffee talk. That's where I'll be Saturday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern. So do go check it out. And who is it? Daniel? I forget who it was. Whoever just did the Patreon, thank you for that. Make sure you hook it up to the Discord if you're interested in come visiting us on the Discord. So thank you. So today is the 1-year anniversary of the single deadliest attack of the war when Russia bombed a drama theater housing refugees that had the word children written on the side in Russian. An investigation by the Associated Press says 600 Ukrainians were killed. 4 Polish MiG fighter jets are coming to Ukraine in the next few days. We then talked a lot about the drone footage of the Russian. Basically, bottom line is it shows the Russian fighter jet actually hitting the drone and proves that the Russians did it, even though we knew that. We knew that. But I was saying I think it's an opportunity for Biden because Republicans are pissed at Russia for doing this, but it's also a danger for Biden if he doesn't do more, because I think people are going to be pissed when they see that video and they're going to say, okay, what did we do in response? They're going to want a response. And as I think it was Elise said, and I agree with her, let the response be giving Ukraine some weapons we weren't going to give them previously, right? Like ATACMS, the long-range missiles. Overall, the number of Russian military operations is decreasing in Ukraine because it looks like the Russians are reaching the point of culmination, which is basically when an offensive army runs out of steam and has to basically dig in and no longer go on the offense. That's great news. Regarding Russian losses in Bakhmut, the British military advisor says the Russians have since May of last year lost 20 to 30,000 Russian troops, including Wagner troops, mostly Wagner troops, attacking the Ukrainian town of Bakhmut unsuccessfully for the last 9 months. 20 to 25,000 men. The Ukrainian counteroffensive, I then talked about some concerns we've got about also whether Ukraine has enough men and enough weapons, and there are real concerns. And excuse me, how the Russians keep sending more and more troops into the Ukrainian town of Vuhledar, apparently just to die, because they're not going to win. And they just keep sending them, which is really stupid of them. In mid-February, Israel approved export licenses for an anti-drone system for Ukraine. That's really good. And then last 2 stories, the UN Office of the High Commissioner on Human Rights issued a report today accusing Russia of war crimes and possibly even crimes against humanity. And finally, France is delaying a European Union ammunition deal for Ukraine because France wants to make sure that all the business goes to European companies. I think that's a valid concern, except right now we're trying to stop a genocide. So maybe it's more important that we get the ammunition to Ukraine and France. All right, guys, thank you all so much. Thank you for the never-ending gifts on TikTok. I love you. Thank you for that. Who's that? Crusher? Who did I say, Mr. Crusher L? I missed a few of you when I was summarizing. Let me see here. I do my romper room. I see Crusher. I see L. Okay, I think I got you guys. I don't think I missed anybody else there. Thank you for that. And Crusher for the confetti, exactly. All right, guys, I will see you tomorrow. Good evening. I'm not going to go to Discord because we've been doing an hour and a half of this. So please do come back tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, U.S. Remember, the time changed in America last weekend, so always check the actual time stamp on my thing that I set up for this. Thank you, Panya, for the boat there. So, Magical, I can't get to all the questions. Sorry. There's a lot of questions that come on TikTok. I just can't get to all of them. Sorry about that. We'll do more tomorrow. All right, guys, have a good night. And moderators, I know today was insane, so thank you for that. All right. See you all. Thank you. All right. You guys, good night.